Good evening and welcome to our Bible study for this evening. My name is Deacon Laurel Vogel and I will be doing the Bible study for tonight. Tonight we are going to look at the story of Zacchaeus. Now the story of Zacchaeus can be found in the Gospel of Luke in the 19th chapter. And if you have a Bible and you'd like to read it for yourself, you're welcome to open it, or of course I have it on the screen here. So let us read the story of Zacchaeus. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not, because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost." So the story of Zacchaeus is very short, but pretty important. I mean, it's important enough that our children sing the Zacchaeus was a wee little man. And I learned to do the little pinky, "A wee little man was he. He climbed up in the sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see." I won't torture your ears anymore with that song. And I'm sorry if I gave you an earworm for that. But we all know of the story of Zacchaeus from when we were in Sunday school. But let's look a little closer at it. So first off, we know 2 things about Zacchaeus. We know that he is the chief tax collector and he was rich. So tax collectors, if you may know, were not very well liked in ancient Israel, or in this time period. I guess it was expanding empire of ancient Rome. I know if you listen, during the Sundays, you'll hear probably your ministers talking a lot about how tax collectors were hated, and they were hated for a couple important reasons. The main one is many of them were fraudulent. So in order to be a tax collector, how it worked was you paid for the commission, so to speak. So you paid Rome the money, and then you collected it as taxes from the people. So it's kind of backwards from what we would think. Instead of collecting it and then giving it to Rome, you pay first, and then you have to make it up as you go along, which leaves these tax collectors, plenty of room to charge more than was necessary. So they often skimmed off the top quite a bit. And a tax collector, someone who was a part of the Jewish faith, the Jewish community, to be a tax collector was essentially a betrayal of the people, because they were, they're in the promised land of Israel, but it's being occupied by the Roman Empire, and you essentially are betraying your people by working for the empire that's occupying your country, your sacred land. And in doing so, you're taking the money from the people and giving it to the people who are in control of your land. It was a huge betrayal, and so tax collectors were often ostracized by the Jewish community. And the text also mentions that Zacchaeus is rich, so we can assume he skimmed a lot off the top. As a chief tax collector, he had it made pretty well. He was the main person that all the money from all the lesser tax collectors funneled through to get to Rome. So he probably had it pretty good, and had probably a pretty high opinion of himself, being a rich man, being a high of stature. So then we see in the next line in verse 3 that he was trying to see who Jesus was. And on the count of the crowd, he couldn't see because he was short. Well, we think, okay, yeah, sure, he's short, he wants to get a better view. Can you think of someone, especially someone whose title is chief tax collector, probably thinks pretty highly of themselves, is in a higher position, is rich, wealthy, probably wearing really nice clothes? Do you really see someone like that running up a tree? He must be pretty desperate to climb this tree, because that's incredibly undignified for someone of his position, and I can't imagine he would really have wanted anyone to see him try to climb up this sycamore tree. And for your reference, I have a picture of a sycamore tree. This picture I actually took when I was in Israel for a month when I was studying in seminary, and the sycamore trees lined this whole area. This was near the Sea of Galilee, and the sycamore trees were amazing, amazing trees, but very, very covered in. This one is quite tall, and a lot of the leaves are really high up, which is kind of unusual. A lot of the sycamore trees, all the branches are much lower, so it would be difficult to see someone who climbed up in the tree, especially if you've got people lining the streets seeing you, and yet Jesus sees him. Even though Zacchaeus is hiding, Jesus sees him. And not only does Jesus see him, Jesus calls to him, and he says, I'm going to go eat at your house. Which we might kind of think like, oh, that's presumptuous. However, back then that was a huge honor. I mean, all these people were lining up to see Jesus, clearly someone of great importance, and this important person says, I'm going to eat at your place. I'm going to bestow on you the honor of hosting me, which hospitality was a huge, huge, huge thing in ancient times, and that's something we can get into in another Bible study. But it's a huge honor that Jesus bestows on Zacchaeus. Enough so that everyone around grumbles, like, oh, why is Jesus going to go eat with him? Like, ugh, we don't like him. And then Zacchaeus says that out of nowhere, Zacchaeus says that he's going to give half his possessions to the poor, and anyone he's defrauded will pay back 4 times as much. I mean, imagine, he's a tax collector, and he's probably been doing it for a while to get pretty rich. And so to pay someone back 4 times as much as he took from them, imagine, like, let's say he's been at it for 10 years, and, taking taxes, even just be minimal, like 100 denarii a year, and for 10 years, and then think 4 times that that's a lot of money. And he's going to do that to everybody? I mean, that's incredible. And kind of unbelievable. Like, it might even be that can he even pay that much? He might be spending the rest of his life, the rest of his income, attempting to pay back the people whom he stole money from. That's a huge, huge commitment that he's making, not only to Jesus, but to everyone else who's listening. And Jesus welcomes him back. And that might sound strange because, well, Zacchaeus wasn't lost, right? But sometimes our decisions can make us lost, at least not physically but metaphorically. Zacchaeus chose the life that he led. He chose to be a tax collector. He chose to make money off the backs of his neighbors, of his fellow Jewish people. And that's hard. Forgiveness is really hard, especially when someone did it intentionally. I mean, it's easy to say if you accidentally trip someone that you're sorry, and forgiveness is easier that way. Or even if, you did something the outcome was negative in a way that you didn't intend, it's much easier to forgive. But when someone does something on purpose, intentionally steals from you for years, that's hard. That's really hard. And Jesus, I mean, all these people that have been stolen from, they don't want him part of the community. I mean, just think if it happened, in a local community, if someone, let's say like an official stole money from an organization community, would you really want to welcome them back? I mean, even if they said they were, if they wanted to repay everything, it'd be hard. And I think oftentimes we don't, I mean, it's easy to ostracize that one person, but think about their families too. I mean, Zacchaeus probably had a wife and children, and they were all ostracized because of Zacchaeus' choices. And so Jesus wasn't just offering a welcome back into the community for Zacchaeus, but for his entire family. And we know that he was welcomed back in the community because Jesus called him, he says, because Zacchaeus too is a son of Abraham. And that making it very, very clear that he is part of this Jewish community. That despite betraying them, being a traitor and serving Rome, Jesus is welcoming him back. And a lot of people didn't like that. Understandably, I guess, for us, because it's hard. But Jesus says, the very last verse, for the Son of Man came to seek out and save the lost. And this is important because Zacchaeus doesn't make the first move. I mean, it says that Zacchaeus wanted to seek Jesus, but it never said that Zacchaeus intended on repenting or even saying anything. I mean, the fact that he would climb up in a tree, hide in a tree, would kind of signify the opposite, that he wasn't interested in talking to Jesus, he just wanted to see him. But Jesus seeks us out. Even when we're hiding, even when we don't want to be found, Jesus still seeks us out. And it's also interesting that Zacchaeus doesn't say he's sorry either. He says he'll repay them. He says that he will do better. And Jesus still forgives him. And that might be hard too, because in reality, we don't always get an apology when someone wrongs us. Maybe that person eventually tries to do better, but it can be hard. It can be a sticking point if they don't apologize for hurting us. But Jesus pushes past that. Jesus didn't need Zacchaeus to do anything. Jesus looked for him. Jesus called out to Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus answered. Zacchaeus answered in a stunning way, and Jesus welcomes him home. And as we said, Jesus' decision wasn't popular with the people. They grumbled at him, like, oh, why is he going to be with him? We're so much better than him. We keep all the rules. We keep the laws. We don't sin. Which, if you listen to any of mine or my husband's sermons, you know that, of course, we all sin. And we're forgiven anyway. But yeah, these people grumbled, like, oh, he eats with sinners. Why can't he eat with, this us better people? I mean, we're not perfect, but we're better than that guy, right? So, yeah. That's not what Jesus does. Jesus doesn't do what we think he should do. I think it's very apparent by the Gospels. Jesus not only welcomes sinners, but he actively seeks them out. So let us try not to be like those crowds who grumble about those that God wishes to seek out. It's not for us to judge who God brings when God brings us all together. We are all sinners, and we are all together saved through the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Just as Zacchaeus, not even necessarily looking for forgiveness, was sought out by Jesus, so too are we. We may not even realize that we need to ask for forgiveness. We may not even realize that our actions are wronging people, are hurting others. But Jesus still seeks us out. And even when we do, Jesus still seeks us out. And that's not a popular decision. We like our world to be black and white. We like things to be right and wrong and neat, organized categories, and we don't like it when things get muddy, but that's exactly what Jesus does. He muddies things up. He invites the bad people into the community and forgives them. Now, of course, that's not saying that if people are actively harming others and show no interest in not hurting other people, that we should just forget what they're doing, because of course we need to keep ourselves and our community safe. However, it's still not for us to judge. God forgives who God forgives, and that's everybody. And that's not a popular decision. Jesus died on the cross to save all of us. No exceptions. And that's not something that we really want to happen, because we want to earn it somehow. We want it to be about our actions. But I think this story says clearly that it's not. Zacchaeus again didn't seek it out, but he was given it. And so too are we, given forgiveness and offered a chance to be welcomed back into the community, the children of God. Whether we seek it out or not, Jesus is always there and always seeking out to save us, each and every one. So thank you for joining the Bible study today. It was short, but important. And I hope you all have a blessed week.